Change is the antidote to feeling stuck in life. Oftentimes, change is something that is just thrust upon us and we have no choice but to accept it and make it work in our lives. However, there are other times where change is something that we should cultivate ourselves because in the long run, change is what helps us to thrive. We always hear about change being a constant in our lives, but we never really hear about why it's essential for us to bring about change in our own lives, especially if we're feeling stuck. Hey everyone, I'm Suk, and if you're new to my channel, then I talk about all things positive mindset and healthy living related. I share about ways to cultivate more happiness and more fulfillment in your daily life. To kick off, let's talk a little bit about feeling stuck and in what cases it could actually be a good sign in your life. Oftentimes, we may find ourselves feeling stuck because we've actually created stability and a good routine in our lives. What we may actually find is that we've achieved all of the objectives and all of the goals that we may have set ourselves, for example, in relation to our career, our lifestyle, or even our relationships. When you're on the pursuit of an objective or a goal, it can feel very exciting and it can feel very thrilling. However, if you are somebody that's feeling stuck because you've actually achieved all of your goals, then before I begin this video and share my thoughts on how you can get away from feeling stuck, it's really important to think about if you're actually somebody that's in that position. If you are somebody that is in a position where you have achieved all of the goals that you might have set yourself a couple of years ago, then it's really important and I really urge you to find a moment to be grateful and find a moment to really reevaluate where you are in your life at the moment. However, if you are somebody that's watching this video, I suspect you may be a highly ambitious person and you're really just looking for your next objectives and your next goal to achieve in your life. When we are in the pursuit of a goal, we find ourselves thriving to cultivate new habits, new behaviors, and we often find ourselves learning something new to make something new happen. You'll find that all of these new habits that you might have created to achieve the life that you have today have just become your new baseline. And it's really important to take a step back and be grateful that you may actually be somewhere you wanted to be a couple of years ago. It's really important to also think about if you're somebody that's perhaps trying to achieve a new goal and you find yourself not really making it work and whatever you try just doesn't work and you find yourself feeling stuck because you're doing the same things day in, day out, expecting to achieve an objective that's just not happening at the moment. In today's video, I want to share a little bit more about how to stop feeling stuck and to actually bring about change in your life so that you can cultivate a new sense of meaning and more fulfillment in your day-to-day. The first thing that you have to do, and this is the main exercise that I want to delve into on this video, is to evaluate where you currently are versus the expectations that you may have had or where you want to be in the future. What you want to do is bridge your understanding of where you are today and what you need to do to get to yourself in the future. It's really important to make sure that the expectations that you set out in this exercise align with who you are and where you want to be, and not where you think you should be based on society's expectations or what other people may be doing in their lives. As part of this exercise, it's really important to be realistic about where you are and where you can actually go. If you're somebody, for example, that's trying to get into running and your first objective is to run a marathon, but you've not even run a 5K, it's really important to set yourself up for success through small habits and small changes that you can make. To do this exercise, get out a piece of paper. It can be a scrap piece of paper. Split it in two and break it down into who I am today and who I want to be or who I will be in the future. Then the next thing that you want to do is in your first column, really write down all of the things that you're grateful for about yourself and everything that you may have worked towards and you may have achieved so far. In the first column, you're really trying to write down from a perspective of yourself a couple of years ago that may actually have wanted to be in the position that you're in. For example, if you've just graduated university and maybe you're in a position that you haven't got your graduate role and you haven't got a graduate job, but 3 years ago you hadn't even started university and you had just passed your A-levels, then you have to show appreciation for the fact that you may have just graduated and you've achieved this milestone that you only once had imagined a couple of years ago. If you write from a perspective of yourself 5 years into the future who expects you to already have a graduate role, then you're really not really thinking about the gratitude that you have for your situation today, and you really end up making it a exercise where you dump on yourself, and that's just not the purpose of the first part of this task. Once you've written down everything that you're grateful for in your life, what you've achieved, who you are, maybe it's even small habits that you have. Perhaps you've cultivated really good friendships in your life. Perhaps you're somebody that has a really good relationship with their family, or you've cultivated a very strong relationship with a significant other. You may have even achieved certain milestones when it comes to certain hobbies that you've wanted to try. Let's say, you're trying to get into knitting or painting, and you may have started off at zero skill, but you have a little bit more skill now and you're able to do things differently. Then that is something that you should write down in the first part of this exercise. The second part of the exercise is also very simple. You want to write down where you actually want to be, and you want to, underneath that, write down what are the actions that you need to take and break it down into small chunks. So let's take the example of you trying to run a marathon. You have to be realistic, as I mentioned. If you've never run a 5K, then that should be one of your sub-objectives. It's really important to break it down so that you can see everything that you need to do to get to who you want to be or what you want to achieve. With the example of a marathon, let's say you give yourself a time frame of a year or a year and a half, which is something that is realistic if you're a new runner. Then you can then break it down into running your first kilometer. You can break it down into running 3K, 4K, and really getting up to the full marathon length over the next couple of months. And that could be your sub-objectives that you actually write down. Another thing to remember is that this exercise is not about writing down everything that you want to do. It's about who you want to become. Rather than writing down, I want to run a marathon in a year and a half, and I'm going to do this by running a 5K, running a 10K, etc. You actually want to write, I am a marathon runner. You want to write, I'm a regular runner. That's how you actually make sure that you cultivate that identity shift. That's really important to bring about that change and to bring about yourself not feeling stuck. What you're actually trying to do is to create a blueprint about who you used to be and where you actually want to go. And you have all of these sub actions to help you drive that forward. And every single day you need to evaluate this list and think about, did the actions that I did today actually align with who I want to be in the future? If on your piece of paper you have, I'm a marathon runner or I'm a regular runner, but it's been about 1 week, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and you've not actually run, then you'll realize that your actions don't really align with the identity that you're trying to create. It's really important to use this piece of paper as your guiding source to help you navigate every single day of your life and to help you come back to center when you've been distracted from outside forces. If you are looking at social media and you're looking at your friends and family and what they're doing, you really need to come back to your own golden source and use this piece of paper to guide yourself towards who you want to be and what you want to achieve. And this is how you make sure that you continue to make momentum towards your own life, and then you'll actually stop feeling stuck and you'll find that every single day is different and you're cultivating who you are through these small steps. One thing to really remember is that as humans, we really thrive off of having challenge in our lives. We thrive off of having a purpose. And if you have achieved all of your objectives so far, or you're finding that you're not really able to achieve what you have planned and you're not really able to move forward in a certain area in your life, then that can really bring about feelings of being stuck. It can bring about feelings of disappointment. And it's really important to find out ways to move past that through cultivating that change in your life. And you'll do that exactly through identifying who you are and where you should be and what actions you need to take that are different to what you're already doing. The next thing that I want to talk about is to actually narrow down the change that you're making. You may have created a very long list from the first exercise of who you want to be and all of the things that you want to achieve. However, to really make sure that you create meaningful change in your life, pick one thing that you can actually stick to and that is super important for your life and for who you want to be. If you have written a list of about 10 things, then you really need to narrow it down to one thing that's really important. And if there are more things on that list that are super important to you, then perhaps narrow it down to 2 or 3 if that makes sense for you. One thing that's really important to remember is the change that you cultivate in your life and that you're trying to bring about has to be meaningful in the long run. It can't just be a distraction to what you're trying to achieve or who you want to be. When we're actually feeling stuck, we often find ourselves wanting to do something drastic like getting a tattoo or dyeing our hair. What that actually does is only alleviates these negative feelings that we have, but in the long run, we find ourselves, nothing really significant has changed, and we're still kind of in the same place that we used to be, maybe just with better or different hair. This point also goes beyond those temporary routine changes that you might actually try to implement. You might think to yourself, I feel very stuck, I'm very bored, let me book myself a holiday or let me go away for the weekend, right? What that actually does is it gives you this temporary satisfaction, it alleviates those feelings of being stuck, but it doesn't really bring about any significant change. You may find yourself experiencing something new, but your day-to-day life is still the same, and you still may find yourself back to square one once you come back from that holiday or once you get back to your regular routine. The real change and the real feeling of not being stuck comes through doing something every day or as part of your regular routine that is allowing you to bring about that long-lasting change. Let's go back to the example of you trying to run a 5K or a 10K or a marathon. You may find that you have this objective and you want to be a runner. What you actually want to do is implement it in your life in a meaningful way, but also in a way that actually works for you and in your life. When you are trying to bring about that change and you are trying to bring about new habits, you have to make sure that it is sustainable for you and your current lifestyle. There's no point setting yourself a new habit or a new lifestyle or a change that you can't actually meet because it doesn't fit in with your current lifestyle and you can't even make it work. For example, I was once studying for a finance-related exam, and I thought the best thing to do would be to start waking up at 5 a.m. to actually start studying, to give myself more time in the day. I have no problem with waking up at 5 a.m. and I'm very much an early bird if I want to be. You'd think that that was actually something that was sustainable and manageable in my life. However, I found that I also had the objective to be more social and actually hang out with co-workers and friends from work and friends from university, and getting up at 5 a.m. and saying to your friends, hey, actually, I have to go home at 8:30 because I have to be in bed by 9:30 or 10 because I need to wake up super early, was just not something that was sustainable with my current lifestyle or what I actually wanted my life to look like in the longer run. You want to make sure that the change that you set yourself up with or the habit that you want to cultivate is actually sustainable and you can actually make it work in the current lifestyle that you have. There's no point of setting yourself the objective to run every single day or to run every other day if in 2 weeks or 3 weeks you're going to give that up because it's so unsustainable, it's very difficult to do, or it's so hard on your body that you can't actually make it work alongside perhaps your day job, perhaps you're taking care of children, perhaps you work longer hours and it's not something that's actually sustainable. Then there's no point trying to implement this in your life at the moment. Oftentimes we try to do this thing where we bring about value from the quantity of what we're doing or through watching what other people are doing and how much they're doing. So you might see your favorite influencer running every single day and try to do the same, but that doesn't actually work for you because they're not working long hours and you may actually be working long hours, or you may already have a physically strenuous job. So to bring about something like running in your routine is just very difficult to do. You may actually find that only running once a week is perfect for your routine right now. And once you actually get better at running and you find that you can now run a 2K or 3K or 5K, then you can start implementing perhaps running twice a week or running 3 times a week. And as you get closer to your objective of doing a marathon or a 10K or whatever you actually have down, then you can try and implement a different routine or a different lifestyle or kind of up how much you're doing. It's really important that the thing that you decide to change or the thing that you decide to focus on, you don't do too much too soon, you don't do everything all at once, and you try to implement this gradually and slowly, and eventually in your life, you'll start to see it as a sustainable and meaningful change. One of the biggest things that I like to implement in my life is the bad things feel really, really good before you do them, and the good things always feel really, really good after you do them. So if you're trying to, go for a run, before you go for a run, you're not going to want to do it. It's not going to feel very appealing. Perhaps you've had a long day at work, you're really not going to want to go for that run, and you're not going to want to do that thing, right? However, when it comes to things that feel really, really good before, let's say you're trying to lose weight and you see a box of brownies, that box of brownies is going to look so appealing. It's going to look like the best brownies you've ever seen. However, it's going to feel horrible after eating that. You might feel sluggish. You may find that you have too much unsettling energy. That will feel horrible afterwards. Remember, your life has to be what you do on a daily and a regular basis. If you want to be somebody and you want to achieve something and you want to try something new, then you have to make sure that the days that you live align with the weeks and the months and the years that you want to have. At the end of the day, you have to figure out what works for you and what doesn't, what is manageable in your current lifestyle and what isn't. And you really have to think deeper and really figure out whether the change that you're trying to cultivate is going to be meaningful and it's going to be sustainable, or it's something that's just going to make you feel better in the short run. It's really important to look for others for inspiration. However, you have to make sure that your actions align with your values and who you want to be in the long run. In today's video, I very much focused on how you can stop feeling stuck through cultivating change in your life, through understanding who you are and where you want to be, and focusing on a narrow set of objectives. In my next video, I'm going to focus a little bit more on rejection, and I'm going to focus a little bit more around people that may be feeling stuck because they're facing too many obstacles and they're facing rejection on the path that they're currently on. So if you're interested in watching, then look out on this channel and I'll post that over the next week or so. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and you have a better understanding of why you may be feeling stuck and what to do to cultivate that change in your life, and why change is so important to move beyond who you are and where you actually want to be in your life in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you like this sort of video, then subscribe to my channel and like, so that I can continue to share this kind of content with you. In my next video, I'm going to talk all about rejection versus redirection. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, then stay tuned and look out for this video next week. Thank you.